The mic and did you guys love that song? I love that song. It's such a great reminder, right, of that, where the higher ground is our higher consciousness, right? And sin, we know in unity, is missing the mark. So every time we have that opportunity to seek that higher ground and release ourselves from any ever thoughts that we've had. Correct? Awesome. So what happens when you stand on a garden hose?
Stop the flow.
Excellent. Right, right. We stop the flow. So, as I mentioned last time I spoke here, I have been teaching a prosperity class at Unity on the River, and I came across these words by Charles Fillmore. Um, he said, he said in his book, forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. In these words, Jesus expresses the infallible law of mind, the law that one idea must be dissolved before another can take place. If you have in your mind any thoughts that someone has wronged you, you cannot let the cleansing power of spirit and the richness of spiritual substance in until you cast out the thought of the wrong and have forgiven fully. And then he goes on to say, you may be wondering why you fail to get the spiritual illumination or to find the consciousness of spiritual substance. Perhaps the reason is here, a lack of room for the true thoughts because other thoughts fill your mind. If you are not receiving spiritual understanding that you feel that you should have, you should search your mind carefully for unforgiven thoughts. And I read that and I thought, oh, shift. I think I've been standing on my own garden hose, blocking my own flow. So today I want to talk about forgiveness. That's our spiritual power of release, our ability to release and let go of all that is no longer serving us. And I've really come to realize that forgiveness really needs to be a part of our spiritual toolbox. It needs to something that we call upon as often as we call upon prayer and meditation. That we want to always be releasing all that doesn't serve us. And forgiveness is a great way of being able to do that. So, have you been standing on your own garden hose? See, the reason why I think it's important to talk about this is that it really is our ability to release and forgive, and it creates a hallowed space for that Christ consciousness to live in us and as us. It supports us in living in the flow. And I came up with an acronym for flow, which is forgiveness, love, oneness, and wonder. Are you living in the flow? Charles Fillmore stated that so long as we believe in debt, we will go into debt and accumulate the burdens that follow that thought. Whoever has not forgiven all men their debts is likely to fall into debt himself. And then I came across this from Myrtle Fillmore that I love. I just love Myrtle. And this is from How to Let God Help You. Should one always be sweet and forgiving? Yes, but not necessarily soft and without backbone or individual conviction. She says, be sweet. Know that it is the expression of the Christ ideas in your consciousness. Be forgiven because the true light reveals the fact that others are only children. They're experimenting, they're trying to use what God has given them, and dependent on, to some extent, on the discipline and the help that comes from bumping up against one another. Anyone ever bump up against anyone? Nelson Mandela said that when he was being released from prison, he said, As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead for my freedom, I knew that if I didn't leave the bitterness and hatred behind, that I'd still be in prison. Mandela's approach to forgiveness is rooted in the belief that forgiveness is not weakness, it's rather strength that allows us to forgive. Forgiveness liberates our soul and removes fear. That's why it's such a powerful weapon to have in our arsenal of things. And forgiveness is not always just about forgiving others, it's about forgiving ourselves. And that's really vitally important. Rev Jim Blake, the CEO of Unity Headquarters, states, "Forgive yourself first." He says, "This is how forgiveness frees us. When we are stuck in a cycle of reliving our mistakes, we unintentionally end up taking it out on the world around us, days and weeks and months, and even years after the original act. We are experiencing disturbances inside which color the way that we show up in the world in the form of impatience, anger, frustration, or sadness. It can also affect our decision-making and choices as we move through our present days, and this underlying current of emotion influences our reactions. This is how forgiveness becomes an act of self-care. Once we are able to release our mental and emotional processes of the past, we open our minds and hearts to current circumstances. We can become present with this moment, unencumbered by underlying emotions, and can choose to fill the space with gratitude and focus on the positive desires and outcomes we are seeking in the present moment. And may it be so. Right? Colors and lenses that we see the world. Everyone's heard the story of the couple, they move into a house, and the woman is like complaining about her neighbor, how she really needs to learn to do laundry because her clothes look terrible. They're all dull and dirty looking. And she's complaining to her husband, and this goes on for a couple of weeks, and then she gets up and she's like, "You won't believe it. The neighbor must have finally changed her laundry detergent. Her clothes look great." And he says, "I got up early and I washed our windows." But how often do we do that, right? We judge by appearances and we project. And if we have unforgiving thoughts in our mind towards ourselves or others, it's going to be projected in the world around us in the way that we show up. Patty was like I couldn't have planted her testimony any perfectly to go along with this talk, right? We release and we create the opening. See, I think we deserve to be free. And we always have to ask ourselves, do we want to be right or do we want to be free? And I think we avoid forgiveness work because sometimes it can feel really uncomfortable. And sometimes we want to bypass it because we erroneously think that if we give it attention, we're giving attention to negativity. But it's just the opposite. When we can bring attention to it and feel whatever we need to feel and then release it, that's where we create the opening. In our healing, we find our own freedom. So, are you standing on your own garden hose? So how? How do we do this? I always like to bring in a how and some tools because that's the fifth unity principle, right? It's not enough to live these truths. How do we do it? And it really supports us in our journey when we have some tools on how to do this. Most of you are familiar with the Eye of the Storm by Gary Simmons. If you're not, it's really a great book. I love it. I highly recommend it. I'm sure you guys have done it in book groups and all that. It's to me, it's like a book that I could read once a year and gain something from it. The whole premise of that is that when we're connected to our wholeness and worth, we know that nothing and no one is against us. And there's also, and that's a great thing, because when we feel like we're at odds with the world, the choice is to go within and say, oh, how am I not feeling connected to my wholeness and worth in this moment? So there is a workbook that goes along with that, and I love this. It's the day-to-day reconciliation journal, and it's a 21-day practice. What's great about practice, when you do it for 21 days, you build a habit. You're building new neural pathways in your consciousness, so you can have your consciousness aligned with joy. So the whole premise of that 21-day practice is that every day you start by describing a situation that was revealed by your heart, what you did or didn't do that might have caused harm or separation that day. And then you ask your heart, how would you have responded to those involved? What difference would it have made if you had related from your heart? What inner resources were missing that created that situation within you? Were you feeling insecure or unworthy? What was coming up for you around that? And then, what will you do tomorrow to reconcile with that person or people or situation? And then you complete the sentence that says, if given the gift of tomorrow, I promise my heart I will, fill in the blank, I will think before I speak, I will practice the power of pause, I will center myself in love first, whatever it is. And what's really great about that practice is that after you do it for a couple of days, it's like you find yourself not saying things because you don't want to have to you don't have to do the work on it later, but it becomes a habit, and so that you're thinking before you speak and you're watching your judgments and all of that. It just makes us more aware, and what we're aware of we can shift and we can change. Just about every prosperity class that I've ever taken, and trust me, I have taken them all, 4 T's, Keys to the Kingdom, Mary Manor Morrissey, all of those, I've taken them all multiple times. As I'm sure all of you have too. I know some of you have been in Unity for a while, so I know that you've taken them. They all have a section dedicated to forgiveness. And Rev. Edwene Gaines, in her book, The Spiritual Laws of Prosperity, which is really a great book. Anyways, she's got 4 laws of prosperity, and the 3rd law is forgiveness. And she actually has 5 different techniques in here for forgiveness. And so it's really good to have those in your toolbox. She tells the story in the book about one of the practices that she does is that every year she sets aside a day where she's not going to be interrupted, and she does like an inventory of her whole life. She goes back to her childhood up into present to see if there's anyone that she needs to do any forgiveness work. And she tells the story about one of her exes coming up, and she's like, oh, that's strange. Well, so she did the forgiveness work on him, blessing him, forgiving him, wishing him well, wishing him prosperity. And about a week or so later, she gets a check in the mail for $3,000 from him, saying that he wished her well, and he was clearing up a debt, like a debt she had long forgotten that he owed her, and paying that off for $3,000. She said, after that, I prayed for him about every week. So that's one of the tools that she uses. There's another one that's from her book that I used in my class. And there are a list of 8 affirmations that you do every day. And so I'm going to have us go through those. And so I'll have you guys repeat those with me. The first one is, I forgive myself completely for every mistake I have ever made. I forgive myself completely for every mistake I have ever made. I forgive others, knowing that we all did the best we could at the time. I forgive others because we all did the best we could at the time. I let go of guilt, shame, judgment, and hurt. I let go of guilt, shame, judgment, and hurt. I am free from condemnation. I forgive my parents completely. I forgive my parents completely. I forgive everyone who did not give me the love and attention that I desired. I forgive everyone that did not give me the love and attention that I desired. I forgive myself my unconscious behavior of the past. I forgive myself my unconscious behavior of the past. And I forgive others theirs as well. I allow myself to feel forgiven and to move forward in life. I allow myself to feel forgiven and move forward in my life. Now here's the part that everyone they were fine with that, right? But then there's another part to that where you have to handwrite 70 times a day. I, insert your full name, Amy Marie Mary Jocelyn, fully and completely forgive myself. And you write it 70 times a day by hand. And it was like, 70 times a day? I don't have time for that. And yet, when I teach a class, I really immerse myself. So I don't do anything that I don't have others do anything that I wouldn't do myself. So I take it on myself. And I'm like, the first day, I did like 35 in the morning and 35 at night. But I got in a rhythm with it, and others in the class did too. They're like, I thought this was going to be really difficult and hard, but it really isn't. And what everyone, even those who were really not on board with doing it originally, what they found is that they really felt a profound sense of peace from doing that. Because here's the thing, especially when we're small children, we think we have more authority or power than we do sometimes. And that's a good thing and bad. It's part of our victor consciousness. It's part of our development. But sometimes we are blaming ourselves for things that really weren't our fault when we were little, but we took them on somehow. Or it's just unconscious things, self-deprecating thoughts, little things that we blow off, that we hold against ourselves. And by doing it 70 days, it's really thorough, especially if you do it for a whole week. So I really invite people to, even if you've been like, oh, that's okay, my hand's going to be sore. But it's a kinesthetic piece too. Because what's funny is still in my mind is when I go to say something mean to myself, I hear myself going, I, Amy Marie Jocelyn, fully and completely forgive myself. So I invite you to take that on as a practice. Also, another one is great, because they say that people struggle with forgiveness, is the Ho'oponopono prayer. I like Ho'oponopono because it's quick, it's easy, I can do it in my car, I can do it anywhere. And the concept is that I learned it as I love you, I apologize, please forgive me, and thank you. It really doesn't matter which order you really do those things. I like to invoke love first. But basically what it is about really trying to take responsibility too for the world that we create around us. And it's just an opportunity to just apologize for whatever our part was in creating the world that we live in, or the experience that we're having. So that one's a really quick one that we can call on. And then I have one that I call my rock or my stone test. And it's based on that part of the Bible that I think it's John 7:8. It's about the woman that's about to be stoned for adultery. And Jesus says to everyone, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. So sometimes I will actually hold a rock because, I'm a rock feather crystal girl. I'll either physically hold a rock or just imagine it. And then I have to ask myself, is this person doing anything that I've not done before? And I had an opportunity to put this into practice this week because, a week or so ago. So I was at Walmart, and I still wear a mask when I go to like grocery stores or places like Walmart, where I know that, people can't help it. Sometimes that people have to shop sick, and it's just, I work in a nursing field, and anyways, my body, my choice. I wear a mask when I go into big places. So I'm at Walmart, and there was a man who was very displeased and very vocal about the fact that I was wearing a mask. Very vocal. Now, I didn't engage with him, but I had a conversation with him in my head for like 3 days, telling him how I was right and he was wrong, and how dare he. Anyone been there? Like, anyone had those conversations in their head with anyone? Yep. I'm always right.
The person can't argue back.
Yeah. And part of you also, anyone ever want to tell people about how right they are?
They don't ask the same questions, usually.
Yeah. So anyways, I really had to hold my rock with this one, right? And say, have I ever spoken out of turn? Have I ever made assumptions? Have I ever voiced loudly my opinion in a hurtful way? I was able to set down my stone. And able to sit down my stone and bless that person, because hurt people, and when we can get that, when we can connect with our wholeness and worth, it makes it a lot easier to release and forgive. So we're not doing this, stepping on our own garden hose, because here it is, we're here to live fully and completely as the highest expression of the Christ that we can be. And that means releasing and letting go of things that don't serve us, so we can invite in the good. Like the Patty was a plant. She didn't know it, but her story is about letting in that good, because she was releasing and letting go of the things that didn't serve us. So what if you released and let go of the things that didn't serve you? What like delicious good can you bring into your life? What deliciousness wants to come in? What juiciness? What joy, what bliss wants to express itself as you? So I invite you to get off your own garden hose and try some of these forgiveness practices. Make them a regular habit, because you deserve to live as the highest version that you can be. So I want to take this into meditation, and I did bring copies of some of my forgiveness practices in case people want copies. Because, it's always, like I said, it's always good to have tools in your toolbox. So I'm just going to invite everyone to get comfortable in there.